the Brits just can't let things go. My whole family hated him. Everyone I knew hated him because he was a bloody German and all of this business. Absolute nonsense. It was essentially the channel made like £3 and I was like, well, that's it, this is my job. So it's kind of like not it is just me in a spare room in my new house talking crap.
Welcome back to the Cool Down podcast. Don't forget, like, 5 stars, subscribe, all that positive good stuff. It really does help out. Today we actually have YouTube royalty today. F1 YouTube royalty. He's a true OG, been doing it since 2017, long before I came about. Well, I wasn't not born, I just wasn't doing F1 content then. But yes, today's guest is Sean, otherwise known as the F1 Word, a channel that is literally just him. You might think there's lots of people behind it considering how long it's been going. No, it's all Sean's baby. We talk all about it today, his journey coming up, what the future holds as well, and no face reveal today, but he is going to get a camera, so you will see his mug soon enough. Podcast 30, Sean, F1 Word. Welcome to the Cool Down podcast, Sean. First and foremost, can you please do the intro? Just like it's one of your videos. I want to hear it live.
Wow. Yeah. Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the Cool Down podcast.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes. Yes, he said it. It's kind of like the Simpsons meme where they're like, say the line, Bart.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Because last night I was looking back at your first video, 17, not 19, 17 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And it's amazing how like the voice hasn't changed. It's like it could have been yesterday. I mean, it's been you've been in the game for so long now. Like, do you remember that first video?
Like it was yesterday. It's been such a crazy, I can't count, 5 years now? But I remember that so well because I just got so angry about Seb Vettel. I was like, what are you doing, you idiot? And then I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to rant and talk about this race. And it kind of just kicked on from there. But that video was needed for me personally. I had to say some stuff on Seb. I was not impressed.
Yeah, to get it off your chest. So is that incident, Seb Vettel, Azerbaijan 2017, is that the reason the channel exists? Like, did you already have in mind that you wanted to make something on YouTube to talk about Formula One? Or was it like, that was the incident that prompted you to be like, we're going live?
I actually was using the channel I have now under another name to upload gaming content to it. And I was doing some F1 gaming content on there, which was terrible because I can't play the F1 game. I'm crap at it, but I thought, hey, people might want to watch somebody be terrible. So I went for it. And then I was uploading stuff from Fallout and Doom and all sorts on there. And then I started reviewing races and then we moved. So I kind of stopped recording, but I enjoyed the process. And I've never really in my life had anybody to properly talk to about Formula One. Nobody in my family's interested. None of my friends were. So I was like, I'm going to make some videos. I'm going to talk about stuff. This race was epic. Azerbaijan 2017 was incredible. There was controversy, drama, excitement. God knows how those three got on the podium. I still don't know. And I thought this is kind of the perfect time to go for it. And that kind of kicked on from there. And then, of course, we had all the FIA stuff afterwards with investigations and tickings off for Seb, stuff like that, and it just all kind of rolled on from there. So that's why it all started. But if I'm being honest, it sort of started 2016 really with the gaming stuff, which again was terrible. Good Lord.
Well, I mean, going back to that. So yeah, your first furore onto YouTube. Then, what was it that prompted you to start uploading stuff, like gaming stuff? Like, what was the reason to start doing that in a year? 2016. I guess I'm just trying to think of the YouTube landscape back in 2016 because I'm just trying to that would have been, I was just out of uni in 2016. I'm just trying to think what I was watching back then on YouTube, and like what the landscape of the platform was. But yeah, what kind of incentivized you to be like, yeah, I'm gonna put my voice out there?
I was watching a lot of Alex Baldwin, and Ryan Littlemore, who had Ryan L83, I think his channel was called, Arav and people like that. And I kind of thought, I want to have a go at this. And the first thing I uploaded, I think, was I don't know if you can remember if you ever watched it, but is it Aeterno Joe? He and them used to do like those crash challenges, like try to survive how many cars can you crash out. And I tried that, and that didn't go well. But that was kind of what started me on that road. And I was like, I could do this. Gaming YouTube, so much harder than they make it look. I'm not gonna lie. You say easy, I'm sat here going, this is
easy job. That's it. YouTube's not even a proper job, right?
That's what I get told every other day. Yeah.
So I mean, it's funny that obviously that's where you started, and then obviously you've gone into talking about Formula One. Have you ever considered kind of bringing it full circle and jumping back into, because given the platform kind of you've got now, like, I don't see why you couldn't start uploading gaming stuff and, jump into lobbies with Arav and Ben and, like almost kind of return to that. Obviously, I understand that would take time away from your main channel, but have you ever considered that at least?
Yeah, it's something I think about every year when the game comes out. I think I'm gonna jump into this and try and do some videos, and then you get like, this is no saltiness or anything, but then you kind of look at it, it's like Arav and that are uploaded for a week before it comes out, and by the time you get to there, it's like they're not interested in me. I'm really bad at it as well, which doesn't help. So I'd like to. I think this F1 Manager game, I'd quite like to hop into that. I think for the channel, I think that would be a bit more me, because I like my management strategy kind of stuff. So I definitely probably look at that one, but in terms of the actual racing game itself, I don't see the point unless people are happy with me racing around on like 50% difficulty, assists on, things like that.
I'm sure there's a market for it, sure.
Forcing a safety car,
Well, that's the thing. Like, is good you mentioned the F1 Manager game actually, because I feel like obviously we've only seen, haven't we? We've only seen like a very, very kind of a trailer that doesn't really communicate anything, but the potential there and being able to integrate that into, because it's more around decision making, it's not the actual driving, it's the thought. Like, I feel like that could be a great, again, we don't know what we're going to get from it. Is it going to be like Roller Coaster Tycoon? Is it going to be like The Sims? Is it going to be like Civ Rev and an old like RTS game? I'm not exactly sure what it's going to look like, but that could potentially feed into, I'm considering using that as maybe like, how could I make a cool video bringing something to life that doesn't exist, but through using that as in the same way I do my livery redesigns through Assetto Corsa, I could use that to, like, I feel like that could work for both of our channels,
I'm kind of hoping it's like Planet Coaster, but for F1, and I'm sure it won't be anything like that, but I just love the idea that it is, they just take it all from the Planet Coaster engine or whatever they're using for that, and then stick F1 Manager on it, and it's just, I'd love it like that, but I think it's going to be a lot. It'll be strict because it's licensed, isn't it? So they're going to have a lot of stuff they're going to have to follow, be really careful with.
True. I mean, I do wonder, like, I think there's been a lot of appetite for a game like that for a while, so I think it will be good. But obviously, back to your main channel. So obviously, you make that. We're going to digress many times with this podcast. This is what the viewers, listeners out there love to see, I'm sure. Now, obviously, so you made that first video, and then you follow it up. What kind of consistency were you delivering at that time? Like, did you kind of do that as a one-off and then come away from a bit, and then like how did you manage the channel at the start, or were you very dedicated straight away? Like, this is something. I feel like after you've got that kind of rant off of your chest about Seb 2017 Azerbaijan, you felt like, okay, I'm going to keep this going.
I never expected this to be my job. Not in a million years. I did it. It was for that one video, and that was pretty much it. And it was kind of like testing the water, just see what people might be interested in. And then sort of a couple of days after that came out, there was the news of Seb getting a ticking off from the FIA. So I thought I'll cover that because I kind of went a bit ranty in my video. And then I think the Halo got announced a couple of weeks later, and it rolled onto that. And then it all kind of picked up. And I think because I was still full-time there where I was working, still working full-time where I was. So it was very much just a hobby and very much I need some F1 fans to talk at and hope that somebody comes back into comments and talks to me and we have conversations. And that was kind of what it was for me. But by December, it was, I was quitting my job. It was full-time. It just out of nowhere. I did not expect it. But I think at that stage, it was really only any major breaking news and a review after every race, and that was basically it to start with. Then it became odd feature videos. I think I started my Rising Stars of F1 thing, which I started doing, which went down well. Then it became live streams, watch alongs, everything pretty much. Yeah, but like I say, never expected it to be my job, never expected it to work. So kind of like couldn't be happier right now with the fact that this is what I get to do. And if it all ends tomorrow, I've had the best 5 years. I hope it doesn't end tomorrow. I will say that. But yeah, I think if you look at where the channel was in 2019 when I was uploading 4 or 5 times a week and streaming on top of that, I was nowhere near that level, but it was probably more of what it is now, sort of 1 or 2 videos a week.
So after that that initial upload, what was your kind of audience like at that time? So after, what were the viewing figures? Do you remember like how that was received by kind of YouTube and the YouTube algorithm, and how many people actually came over into that video? Like, was it, because I still remember like in the early days, you know, the first video I hit 100 views, I was like, yes, 100 views, banging, love it. And it was like, and obviously your expectations change over time as you grow, but like, where was that video? Did that take a while to kind of take off, or was that because it was topical news at the time? Did it do quite well straight out the bat?
I think for a new channel, it did well. I think it did 100 views in about 3 days, which was I was very excited about, which, like you say, was huge. That's huge when you're first starting out as 100 people on this planet want to listen to me talk nonsense, which is weird. And then it never really went anywhere. It's never really went anywhere from there. The views, it's picked up a damn sight more views since then, since the channel really took off than it did at the time. The algorithm did not promote it at all. It just didn't go anywhere. But I think that's true of most new YouTubers, that the algorithm's just not going to really push the content. So I think the fact that after that I was able to carry on that topic for a little while and get more content out, I think that really helped in the algorithm. But initially it didn't do brilliantly in hindsight. At the time, I was ready to pop open the champagne and, you know, celebrate, massive party, have everyone round for 100 YouTube views. But yeah, it was all right. It was a good start, and I was happy with it, and it gave some good growth early on. So I think most people that watch that subscribed as well, which is quite awesome.
Amazing. Well, I was going to say, because around the kind of F1 commentary side, in terms of talking about the sport, covering live streams, all that stuff, back in 2017, who else was doing it? Because I mean, for me, like I was doing football stuff back then. I was completely, you know, I was only really getting back into F1 in that 2017 season, because when I went away to uni, I didn't really watch F1 at all. Came back and then 2016 I started watching it again. 2017 was my first proper season watching it. But I wasn't really aware of F1 YouTube at all at the time. So, you know, were there other channels doing it at the time that still exist now, or was the landscape quite barren, do you think, at the time?
I'd not really looked into it too much, weirdly. But I got a few people reached out to me pretty much straight away. So the ones I remember were, he's still going now, is Formula World, Dylan, who does his news videos. I think Dre, Motorsport 101, was around then as well. Obviously, I think your Alex Zaffros and co, and I think Arav were doing some IRL stuff as well as the gaming stuff. And there was a guy that I knew called, and they're the only ones I knew of. There was probably loads more, but they're the only ones I knew of. So when I first went for it and decided to try and make this something that could make some money and be a full-time job, that for me at that stage was the gap in the YouTube market for F1 content, because it was all predominantly gaming. So I thought, let's try and go, like you say, into the commentary stuff, into chat. Let's try and build a community, and that's what it was all about to start with. I was having YouTubers on from all over the place, anyone could get hold of. Jonty joined up, and then Dan eventually, and Stuart, and it just all kind of grew from there. But initially it was just going for that gap. You know, if you don't go for a gap that exists, then you're no longer an F1 YouTuber. But that was dreadful. I'll leave now. I'm off. I quit.
You're gonna get a slow clap for that one, mate. That was brilliant. It's so true though. But it's interesting that you did acknowledge at the time that there was a kind of gap that you felt that could be filled with your voice, essentially. Because I feel like, you know, I'm not just saying this because you're on the podcast, but you have and maybe it's because we don't see your face. Maybe it just heightens the audio from your videos, but your voice is still, like, I could see you on the radio 100%, or hear you on the radio, should I say. You've got that voice. And even from your very first video, this is what I mean. That's what I was so like impressed about when I went back through your earlier stuff. And I was like, wow, like you're a natural at this. So like, was your day job in any way tied to you speaking, or is this just a skill that you've kind of developed maybe unknowingly on the side? I don't know, but you're really good at it, mate, clearly.
I mean, two things. Firstly, thank you very much. That's really kind. Secondly, my mum always said I had a face for radio, so maybe that's
maybe
parent issues. No, job-wise, no. Well, I worked at Aldi. That's the German discount supermarket, not the car company. God, I'd love that. So I worked there, so not really anything to do with commentating or talking or anything like that. I had no experience at all in editing videos. I'd never recorded my voice at all. I'd done absolutely nothing. I suppose working in retail, after a while, you kind of reach a point where you just don't care what people think, and maybe that's something I was able to transfer over, in that I'm just going to say what I want to say and talk, and I won't worry about it. But no transferable skills at all from what I was doing. And before that, I was a chef. Before that, I worked as a carer in a care home. I started off as a pot washer. Nothing at all, absolutely nothing to do with even the internet. I had a Twitter account that I set up in like 2014-ish, but I never used it. I never used social media. I didn't even use Facebook. Nothing. So even though it's been 5 years, I've only really been on the internet for 5 years. So my entire internet existence is the F1 word, which is brilliant and quite depressing at the same time, actually.
You could argue, opposite. I mean, I think it's the whole balance, isn't it? Social media and putting yourself out there. It's kind of there's pros and cons. It's a poison chalice at times, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad. I mean, again, I feel like I think quite similarly in terms of like I never posted. I've had a Twitter account for I don't know, since like 2012 or something like that. But I was always just an observer. I'd use it for news, and I didn't really put my own stuff out there until I started making football videos in 2016. So similarly, I guess for me as well, like, my internet history only goes back like 6 years maximum. Which, I mean, I suppose, is nice that no one's going to dig up some old tweets of when I was like 10, tweeting nonsense about God knows what.
That's one advantage, isn't it? Definitely. Just like nothing to come back and bite you in the backside, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, some of my opinions might be a bit sus, but, it's nothing that can get me destroyed. But also, like, so you weren't kind of, you'd never worked in kind of broadcasting or media at all, but when you were a kid, I'm just trying to think of an interesting way of saying like the F2 word, the F3 word, the Formula Regional word. I don't know. When you were a little one, did you have any ambitions to work in media in any way, shape or form at all? Or is this just something you've just completely fallen into?
I wanted to be a vet. That was what I wanted to do as a kid. I didn't even get bloody close to that, did I?
Amazing.
Everything else I've done. That was what I wanted to do. So, not really, no. I mean, I used to play the F1 games as a kid on the old PS1. And I used to squawk along as my parents used to call me Murray Squawker, because that's what I used to do, commentating over that. That's the closest I ever got.
Okay, so there's something there, clearly. If you had a nickname.
Yeah, sat in the bath, doing my post-race interviews as the driver, doing my really terrible Michael Schumacher impression. That's about as far as it ever went. It was never. I know you don't need the image of me in the bath, but that's as far as it ever went. Never looked at it at all. Never thought about it. And like I say, I just wanted to talk to people or talk at people and hope that somebody wanted to listen. And I've always said, as long as one person is listening, even if I have to go and get a full-time job again, as long as one person's listening, I'll always upload something, because that's kind of what is the point of the channel. I'm just an F1 fan. I'm far from an expert. So I can't even think. I'm trying to think if there's anything at all prior to the F1 word that made me even think about it. I don't think there was. There really wasn't. Which it just kind of happened overnight.
But I think that's so often the case as well. I mean, there's a lot of talk of, I feel like when, obviously we're both British, so we grew up in probably quite similar school systems in terms of what you're pushed towards, and the emphasis of like, right, you need to make these decisions. They're going to determine the rest of your life. And ultimately, I think it's not like a one size fits all. And if, to anyone listening, watching, if you're not, you've got ambitions to do one thing, you're doing something else. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure put on people to be making these pivotal, life-changing decisions that are going to determine everything forever. But it's like, I was doing 3 years ago, I was just doing graphic design. You've been working in Audi and a chef, and now we're doing quite similar things, and it's completely different to what we started doing. And it's not, there's ways of achieving it beyond what degree you have or what experience you've had in the past, right? Because you went out, you saw an opportunity, you made content, and here we are today.
Yeah, totally stay in school. Definitely stay in school, get your education, but it's not the be all and end all. I mean, I don't know if you got them when you left school, but do you remember the National Record of Achievement thing?
Oh God, yeah.
I got one, and they were like, this is your lifeline. Employers will always ask for this. Not once have I ever used that. Ever. So don't believe it. Do not believe it. School's important, but it's not the be all and end all. And it's kind of crazy now you've laid that out, that we've done completely different things in life and somehow ended up in a similar place. It's mental, really. And I guess that's the beauty of YouTube and the internet. It just allows people to, in many ways positively have their opinion, in a lot of ways negatively as well. It lets people have an opinion that maybe wouldn't before, and some people are good with that, and others are, how can I word this? Not very good with having an opinion, or other people having opinions. So it's
dickheads, basically.
Yeah,
that's fine. You can swear on it
with the C word, but I didn't know how far I was allowed to go.
We'll give it till like an hour and a half in, and then you can start dropping C-bombs. No, but that's the thing. It's more to do. Yeah, I think there's so much good that comes out of, particularly from a social point of view. I'd even say the same with like university, like moving out of home, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Like the education system is important, but all I'm saying is that when you're, if you're doing something now that you're not 100% happy with, or, as well, like, you might be open to change. I mean, there was a time when, again, YouTube for me was literally just a hobby. That it was my thing that I did outside of work to relax, and that was my creative expression, to do something a bit different. And now it's my job, and I'd never even considered that. So you went for it, and we're here today. And now the F1 work. I mean, what subscribers are you at now? Because the channels and what's been really nice seeing your stuff is it's been a real like steady growth as well, and you've really built that kind of sense of community, I think, in your channel.
Yeah, well, we're at really satisfyingly 123,000 subs at the minute. 123. I want more subs, Beautiful. But I'd be happy if that stayed at that forever. That is so satisfying. So yeah, we're at that at the moment, or I'm at that at the moment. I keep saying we. It's not a team. I keep forgetting that. A lot of people come at me and say, "Oh, they sort of treat me like a news site because the name The F1 Word sounds like it would be a magazine or something like that." And it's not. It is just me in a spare room in my new house talking crap for hours on end. So that is all it is.
Well, we love you, mate.
I forgot the question. I have no memory. I remember nothing about life. Where am I? What's going on?
Well, no, just so actually, you know what? No, you've just highlighted a better question that I'm going to ask instead, which is the fact that you are behind this kind of brand. So you've got yourself, you're Sean, but then you've got F1 Word. You've got that kind of separation there. Was that always the plan? Was that a conscious choice? And also, have you ever considered like rebranding the channel just kind of under your own name? And also, obviously, because you don't put your face out there on the videos either, how does that all? Because I think with different creators, it's different, right? So, for example, like Stuart Chamber, he typically doesn't have his face on screen, but sometimes does. Yeah, Aldas is the same. Sometimes he does. Josh Revel, he never does, but he's got his character, and so it's kind of him, but not him. And then me, I'm always in my videos. So how do you perceive, and did you just kind of just end up with the format that you're on without really considering it that deeply?
Yeah, I think, yeah, basically, when it started, like I said, I keep saying it, but it was just a hobby when it started. It was never meant to be serious.
Yeah.
So I never even thought about putting my face out there. As the channel grew, initially I was kind of like even less and less I wanted to. I don't know why. I did not have the confidence, and I still don't to this day really have the confidence to put my face out there, but it's more a financial thing now as to why I don't have a camera or anything like that. I've always put the effort into the audio, but I just stumbled on the format. It worked. A lot of people do the same thing now. You look at things from when Autosport do their content, that's mostly photos, video, B-roll, and voiceovers. I think the race do the same. It's kind of the given format now. So it was kind of all by accident this ended up where it is. And I mean, I get asked all the time, when are you going to do face cam? And it's something I want to do. It's something I need to do because I think that format's fine and it works well and it frankly pays the bills. But I think it needs a freshen up. And I think putting my face out there and having a person behind the F1 word might be better for me in the long term, if that makes sense. Because I mean, the F1 word as a brand works brilliantly in the algorithm because it's F1 content, F1's in the name. Fully expecting something from FOM at some point to tell me to take that away, but whatever. Then we might have to rebrand. But I've thought a lot about rebranding. I wanted to go to just my name. I was going to go with the F word. There was loads of things I wanted to do, but I've kind of. A lot of my subscribers will tell you I seem to have this focus at the moment on style over substance. So I'm focusing too much on what my thumbnails look like and how my videos look, and not enough content is going out. So I'm kind of sticking with the format as it is at the minute. And then the big thing next is cameras.
Yeah.
I want to be getting out there. I want to talk to people face to face. I want to, like Autosport next year. I want to interview people face to face and a visual podcast that isn't just me talking down a microphone and people going, I have no idea. Because one thing people need to see when I'm live sometimes is my facial expression, because I've got quite a what's the word? I'm very monotone. I'm very monotone when I talk in some way, so people think everything I say is serious. But there's often a facial expression that goes with it that would really put them off me thinking it was serious, because it is
you can't convey that nuance without people seeing your. So, but I wanted to actually like have a proper little like chat around, you know, why you think you need to as well, because there's pros and there's cons. Like I've found, so what was my most successful video, I took it down now because I thought it was terrible, to be honest. I thought the edit was really bad. But my most successful video was a video without me in it. It was my like.
Oh, that's harsh.
Yeah, I know, right? I know, and I was, you know, I definitely don't get bogged down with like numbers and comparing myself to other people. But there's certain, like, because I love YouTube and I'm trying to educate myself as much as possible on what works, what doesn't, because I really enjoy like learning about the platform and so, for example, me and Josh Revel, right? He's got about 50k more subscribers than me. So I'm at like 250. He's at like just over 300. But he has 17 videos that have more views than my highest viewed video.
Yeah.
Which is super interesting to me, because he's got like, and the fact that my highest video before I kind of took it down was me not in it as well. I think that the virality of a video is adversely affected by putting your face in it. That seems to be my takeaway for some reason. Videos are more likely to blow up and go big, like what WTF1 do, what the race do, where, you know, like for example, WTF1, Matt's not in all the videos himself, like when they're doing the F101s or whatever. But they're more likely to, you know, because I've edited videos for WTF1 that have done, you know, over 2 million views now. And it's like, that's really interesting to me how, and I think it would make a difference on your channel from a viewership point of view, I think, as well, if you did start putting your face in it.
Yeah, I think it'd be more, for me, it'd be more from a live stream perspective. I think in proper edited videos, it would be as it is now. Obviously, I want to improve that, but I think from a live stream point of view, when it is a conversation, it'd be nice to get faces in there, because I think that needs that sometimes. it's all right having pictures, it's all right having stats, but it would just be nice to have some people there, because I think live streams, nothing for me beats live stream interaction. That nothing beats that. And it's, comment sections are great, social media is great, but there's something about just sitting there talking. Somebody throws a question at you, you give a genuine, honest reaction. You'll cock it up. You'll not get across what you want to say. You'll get abuse for it, but nothing beats that interaction and getting a genuine reaction from people. And that, I love that. And I think having face cam on there will be great. In videos, not so much, because I tend to agree with you that I think videos are going to do better if they are just, here are the facts. Here's the information that you need. You don't need me pulling faces at you. You don't need this ugly mug in your face. I think it's more on a live stream thing for me, chatty things. So it feels when I watch people, I watch a lot of, God help me, Mark Goldbridge, because he's a nut
Legend.
job. And I watch a lot of him, and I think his videos would be crap. His live streams would be rubbish if he wasn't there giving you that reaction. So I think that's what it is for me on the face cam thing. I don't think people are that fussed when it comes to the videos in seeing a face, but I think it's different with each creator. I definitely think that's a thing. I mean, when you really kicked on with your F1 stuff, you were one of the first to properly do face cam stuff all the time, and that made your content fresh, if that makes sense. It wasn't the same as everybody else.
Yeah, I think also it depends on the type of content. So if you're just relaying news, for example, so like we said about kind of Dylan F1 World before, like a lot of that is he is relaying the news and not putting too much of himself in the content. And if it's a straight up opinion piece, if it's like a livery ranking or something like that, I feel like it benefits probably more from putting you in it, because it's more, the content is tied more to your very individual take. But if you're kind of covering news in a very kind of matter of fact way, then I think it benefits less. This is something you do really well, is you still, even though we don't see your face, the way you talk about things, your tone of voice and all that, it still comes across as very kind of friendly and informative and chatty. And even though you're not putting your face in that content, you're kind of on that. I think there is that balance between the two, and I think you nail that quite clearly. But I agree. Yeah, I think live streams, sticking your mug in. But how do you feel about that, putting your face out there? Because that's a big step that's a big step for everyone. The first time you do it. The first time I did it was many years ago, so I'm very used to it. But that would be kind of the first time you're putting yourself out there. Does that kind of feel quite intimidating?
I had a Twitch channel a couple of years ago now, and I used Facecam on that when I had a webcam that actually worked. And that terrified the life out of me to start with. But after a while, it became... I enjoyed it more, because people are getting the face expressions, that I'm pulling faces, they're getting the raised eyebrows, they're getting the stupid looks to camera, and that just was fun to do, and it got a great reception from people. But I think there's a thing as well, that it's got to fit on an F1 channel. F1 is very, whilst it's grown massively over the last few years, it's still very niche, and it still has a huge chunk of the fan base that like things a very specific way, and if it's not done that very specific way, they get really mad. So I wouldn't want to do it too much, but it doesn't scare me like it did with Twitch. I say scared, you know what I mean? Just a little bit apprehensive with it all, but it doesn't bother me now as much as it did when I first started that. But it's quite daunting, the idea of going from a couple of hundred followers on a Twitch channel to then throwing your face in front of potentially 123,000 is a bit more daunting. I mean, it's got to be done. I think it's got to be done at some point.
It's good that you've gone through that Twitch experience to kind of, you've kind of already dipped your toes in, so it's not going to be a completely fresh thing. Because the thing is, once you start putting your face out there, I mean, how many are you able to go to many Grand Prix? Have you been to many Grand Prix in person before?
I've not, not really. I've been to the British Grand Prix twice, 2016 and 19, I think it was. Was supposed to go 2020 obviously couldn't. 2021, couldn't make it to that one. Was going to go this year, all ready to buy the tickets. The bastards have sold out. So that's not happening. So it's the one I want to do every year. But I mean, Silverstone is so expensive. But I've only ever been twice, and the first time I went was my 30th birthday. It was a present for my 30th birthday from my whole family. That's how expensive Silverstone is. Whole family had to get together to pay for it. But yeah, I've only ever been twice, and I've been watching F1 since 1990. That's atrocious. That is bad.
Look, I've only ever been twice. I was there 2019 as well, actually. So, well, I might have seen you, but
we wouldn't have.
I wouldn't have known, and you wouldn't have known me either, because that was literally. I think I just started uploading, but that was like long before. That was still when I was talking to no one. So that was and I had a really big beard back then, which looked absolutely awful in pictures back now. But I guess that is a difficulty as well, because, and this is something I've kind of, people say, oh, Tom, do you want to go to loads of races? And I was like, I do, but also, if I'm going to a race, then I can't cover the race on my channel, and I kind of want to cover the race. So there's that kind of, I'm sure you have that kind of conflict as well, you know?
Yeah, and the thing is as well, it's a great experience. If anybody listening has never been to a race, try and get to one. Even it doesn't even have to be an 100%. F1 race, just a proper motor race somewhere. They're brilliant fun, great experience. But from a viewing point of view, they're crap because you don't see anything. So you can't come back on a Monday and go, I'm going to do a review for that race, because you need to sit down and watch the race. So I would, whilst the experience is brilliant, I think if I did Silverstone next year, for example, I'd probably go like the Friday, Saturday, but I wouldn't bother with the Sunday, because I think you miss too much. If you can get opposite a big screen, you're all right. But if you're opposite a big screen watching it, you may as well be at home for free watching it, if that makes sense. So great experience. Really expensive way of just watching Formula One, but I think I'd love to do Zandvoort, I'd love to do Spa, I'd love to do Monza, but I think it would be just for the experiences rather than going for the racing, because you don't see a lot. You're sort of waiting a minute for the leader to come back round again, and then they're gone, and then you wait again and they're gone, and that's it. And I just described F1 perfectly there. That is what it is.
Yeah, no, literally.
That's all they do.
It's just cars going around in circles, isn't it?
That's what my sister always says.
You're spot on, because I think what the value from going to a race is, it feels like a festival. Like I've been fortunate. I've been to Glastonbury a few times, and going to Silverstone, particularly last season, and again, I was sat, I'd like Max and Lewis have this huge accident. Max goes off into the wall 51G. I'm over at where was I sat? Stowe, I think. I don't do corner names. I was miles away, so I didn't even know what happened. I could just hear Toto on the radio, and Mike was saying, "I don't look at my emails during the race." So we could hear that, but otherwise, you miss that. Unlike a sport like football, where you can sit there and you can consume the entire, you know everything that's going on, because you've got a view of everything. It might not be the best view at times, but you can kind of see everything. So that's the balance there. But I mean, I was going to ask you what your kind of number one race to go to, like Spa, Zandvoort would be incredible. What about kind of outside of Europe?
I'd love to do Albert Park. I'd love to do Australia.
Yes.
I would really love to do that. Kota as well. I'm a big fan of that track, and the atmosphere always looks really good. So I think outside of Europe, maybe Canada. No, Canada. Oh no, here we go. I'm just going to list the calendar now, aren't I? I think Montreal would be pretty epic as well, because they're really into their F1. And Suzuka Hill. Yeah, it is all of them. There you go. But in Europe, I'd never even thought about Zandvoort until I saw the scenes last year. And I think that must be, you say about a proper atmosphere and like a Glastonbury style atmosphere. That was what that was. I mean, it was Glastonbury with an F1 race, really. It was insane. I'd love to be there. Not a Max fan, not a Max hater. I'm putting that in there now.
Fence. Sit on it. It's a good point, though. So with your channel, do you tend to put out there because obviously I'm hardcore Alex Albon. Okay, I love the man. I love Esteban. I love Daniel Ricciardo. Like, there's certain drivers I love. I don't dislike any drivers. There's just certain drivers I don't really have a feeling towards. How do you? Because obviously your fan perspective, and I know I always try and reinforce exactly what you said earlier, which is like, I'm not a journalist. I'm not an F1 like expert. I am just a fan speaking my mind on the internet. You know, do you approach your kind of preferences and biases towards drivers in the same kind of way?
It's really hard to explain because I was a huge Michael Schumacher fanboy. You know, you think Max Verstappen fanboys and Lewis Hamilton fanboys are bad on Twitter. I was pure evil. If Michael Schumacher didn't win on a Sunday or retired from a race, I was foul until the next race. That I was so bad. That's why I couldn't go on social media when it became a thing, because it was just safer for everybody.
Probably a good thing.
But I've never really. I can't ever think of like never really latched onto another driver in the same way. The closest I got was Jules Bianchi. So I've never really followed a driver in the same way, but I think it'd be wrong to say that you have drivers that you maybe prefer over others. Kind of like you said, I've not got a single driver on that grid anymore that I have any dislike towards at all. There's nobody. I think they're all brilliant in their own ways, but you know, I think Charles Leclerc, I think he's far better than some people seem to think he is. I don't think he's as good as others maybe think he is. Big fan of Carlos Sainz. Everybody loves Danny Rick, and if they say they don't, they're lying to you. George.
Or themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. George, Mick Schumacher, obviously because of the Schumacher link. Huge respect for Lewis Hamilton on and off track. I think Max Verstappen is insane. So I don't on so many levels. I don't really have a favourite, and that's honest. That's not me just saying I'm going to sit on the fence because it's easier than dealing with fans and that. The minute I start to follow a driver like I did Michael Schumacher, I will say, look, I'm biased towards driver X, and that's that. I'd still make the content. I'd still be honest. If that driver had a crap race, I would say they've had a crap race, but I've not really got there yet. I think the closest, it probably will be someone like a Charles Leclerc or a Carlos Sainz or a Pierre Gasly that I end up following more closely, but I don't think I'll ever get to that fanboy level again like I did with Schumacher because he's like my hero, so I don't want to replace him, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're always going to compare because you idolise Schumacher so much. Yeah. You're always going to be comparing them to your, you know, yes, I like Charles, but he's nowhere near like how much I supported Michael. But so what was it about Michael that you loved so much? And what do you think it would take a new driver to do or be? Or what do you think your support of a driver, understanding how much you love Michael and the drivers you like now, what do you think it is that makes a driver an F1 word seal of approval, for want of a better term?
Well, I mean, they've got to be Stoffel Van Dorn. It's as simple as that. You've just got to be Stoffel Van Dorn. You don't have to be anything else. That's absolutely fine. Highly rate him. Yeah. That's a tough one. So it's weird because my grandma was a huge Michael Schumacher fan. So I think that's where it came from. Because I can't ever, and I know we're going back a few years, but I can't ever remember why it was Michael Schumacher to start with. So I can only think that it was through her. But it was the respect he had for his rivals, even when he was over the line, you know, and he was such an aggressive driver, such a fast driver. He made so many mistakes. I know he did, and he did some really dumb stuff, but I had mad respect for him and a lot of love for him because he was a racing driver and he was the pinnacle for me. And I think in some ways, in all honesty, it probably started in the same way that my, sorry mate, love for Manchester United started, in that he was winning. So, you know, support the guy or the team that's winning because you're never going to be let down. That's gone really well with United, though.
Hey, mate, that's you know what? That's very honest. That's I respect that. That's very honest.
It grew over time, and I just became obsessed with him. He became my hero, and then the more I learned about, because obviously here in the UK, he was German, and for some reason, the Brits just can't let things go. So my whole family hated him. Everyone I knew hated him because he was a bloody German and all of this business. Absolute nonsense. But the BBC and people like that and ITV were so biased against him. You only ever got this. They only really wanted to talk about him, or it felt like that way, extensively when he did something wrong. And they were full of criticism for him. And I didn't always believe that because I got to read some, you know, magazines and things they told a different story. You've got insight. You know, like now you've got your Chris Medlands and your Luke Smiths and people. They give you that insight. You got that from your Autosports and that back then, so you could see another side to that story. And I'm so glad that I didn't fall for that crap from the media, because now that we can go back and watch YouTube videos and things from the past, you can see that he had so much respect for people, was so much fun behind the scenes, but was a freaking brilliant driver as well. And he's just somebody that it's so hard to explain. It's just something that I watched him from 1992 all the way until he retired, and then came back and then retired again. And it was just a huge, I think when it comes to, you know, sports heroes, celebrity heroes or whatever, I think the person that you grew up supporting is always going to hold that special place. They'll always be on that pedestal. I don't think that'll change. So for any driver, I don't think there'll ever be a driver I'll support like that again. I don't think there's a driver I want to support like that, but they've got to have a lot of Schumacher qualities, probably without the turning in on people and crashing accidentally in Monaco. You know, things like that they could do without. But it's a tough one, because I think as well, because of the situation with him right now, it makes it harder as well to even want to look at anybody else. I feel like I've been in a relationship with him for about 30 years now. It's ridiculous.
No, but I mean, it's a huge part of life, and particularly, you know, you have the same with. I think you have the same. We can talk about football. You have the same with individual footballers, but the emphasis is always more on teams. You know, you're like you say, I'm a West Ham fan. You're a Manchester United fan. Like, yes, I love Mark Noble, but I don't introduce myself as, hi, I'm a Mark Noble fan. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really work like that.
That'd be so weird.
That would be a bit weird. I am, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not really, doesn't really work like that. But I guess the fact that the people around you when you were younger were kind of so anti, there felt like there was this anti-Michael sentiment, would probably only reinforced your vigor of love for, because it's funny, so I was always more of a Mika Hakkinen kind of guy, because I came into the sport, you know, when I first started watching it, probably when I was like 7, 8, I guess, maybe a little bit older than that actually. No, probably like 7, 8, and obviously as much as Hakkinen had won those 2 world titles, it felt like kind of Schumacher was the kind of dominant one. You know, Mika only really won in, what was it, 99, because Michael broke his leg, whichever year it was. Was that 99?
Yeah, he won 98 and then back-to-back 99. But I think Ferrari started that season with one hell of a car.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
like, with all due respect to him, if Eddie Irvine can get that close, I think Schumacher would have won it. I often say that about 94. If Damon Hill can get that close to the title, Senna would have won it if Imola hadn't have happened.
Yeah. Absolutely. But that's the thing. I think sports, you know, I supported Mika because he felt like, and again, I was a kid. I was in single digits. So for whatever reason I chose to support this kind of, I think I just liked the look of the McLaren, to be honest. But I think as well, because he felt like the underdog compared to Schumacher, and I kind of gravitated towards that, being a, you know, West Ham fan, not attracted to the glory never attracted me, Sean. What could I say? It was always the struggle. And I guess that's why I'm an Albon fan now.
I think... Look, I don't want to say too much, Alex Albon, because I'll upset you. But
no, you know what? No, I want to have this conversation. We should talk about Alex Albon, Sean, because I want to understand, first of all, your perspective. I want to respectfully disagree, and then we'll come to a conclusion where I'm right. Basically, I think that's where it's going to go. Right?
I mean, I had a feeling that would be where it ended up. Just shut up, Sean. Tomo's right. Move on.
I've got the power of the edit, mate. So no, go on. I want to hear what you think of Alex, you know, over his career, but also like going into this year as well.
So, as a person, I don't think there's a nicer guy on the grid. Honestly, he's absolutely lovely, and he is a very good driver. And I think when you look at him in F2, the year when he was up against George and Lando, was he top 3 in that one? I mean, that's, you know,
he
to
was
finish
third.
To finish behind George Russell and Lando Norris. Yeah,
it was a couple of points behind Lando in the end, I think.
That's not bad. That's a really good F2 season. And whilst I think he's a good driver, genuinely, I do. I've not just said it because you're there. I don't think he's this world beater that, not necessarily you, but that a lot of people think he is. Like, oh, put Albon in the fastest car and he'll challenge for the title. Well, he didn't at Red Bull. he wasn't close to Max. And that is such a crappy thing to say because that is such a hard seat to have. Even Sergio Perez has struggled at times this year. So that's not an attack on that. I just don't think he's as good as people think he is, but he's not. And you know what the internet's like, you'll know exactly what I mean. He's also not as bad as other people will tell you he is. He's a good driver. So that's that's probably the most negative thing I'll say about Alex Albon, but it's still somehow a positive.
I see him as I see his level, and I see the job he could do in F1 being, once he's had, if he gets the opportunity to stay on and race for you, I think I could see him doing a Hulkenberg Perez-esque kind of job. I don't think he's going to set the world alight.
Driver.
But yeah, exactly. And on his day, I mean, not Hulkenberg because he never got a podium, but on his day can get a podium, because that's the thing, because he had such a good 2019 season. And then there's so much unknown around that second Red Bull seat since Pierre jumped into it. Because Perez, if this is me backing Alex now, percentage relative to Max, Alex wasn't that much behind Perez relative to Max Verstappen in 2020 compared to 2021. But obviously because the car was better in 21 and Sergio did do a better job, but it was I think Alex scored I'm just picking numbers out somewhere. He scored about 60%, 65 of Max's points. Maybe it was 60 in 2020, and Sergio scored about 65, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it wasn't that much of a difference. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I just think performance-wise as well, I don't think he was that much better than Pierre Gasly in a lot of ways. But that just continues to highlight Gasly struggled. Albon was a little bit better, but not hugely better. Perez was better, but not hugely better. What's the issue? It's not the drivers, is it? It's the seat. You look at the job that Pierre Gasly's done when he's gone back to Toro Rosso AlphaTauri. He's been one of the best drivers in that midfield.
This is what upset me, Sean. This is what upset me. Pierre got the opportunity to go back and prove himself and not let that Red Bull stint define his career. Alex hasn't. Hopefully now in the Williams, it will give him the opportunity. And if he flops and if he gets beaten by Latifi, which I think, that can't happen. But if it does, then he's washed. But I don't think it will, because I think he's good.
The funny thing is, the worst thing to happen to Alex Albon's career was Pierre Gasly getting dropped from Red Bull. Because I think if he was allowed to stay at Toro Rosso and develop as a driver in the same way that many have through the years in a lower team, he'd probably 100%. Not have had the year out last year. He may well be in that Red Bull alongside Max Verstappen, giving a much better account of himself. Pierre Gasly was thrown into the deep end way too early, so he was always going to fail. Alex Albon was then thrown into the deep end way too early, so he was always going to fail. That's why they went for Sergio Perez. That's why the talk of, people saying, oh, well, why don't they put Yuki Tsunoda straight in there? Oh, give me a break.
Oh my God, no.
You can't just throw kids in there. It's not working. So that's why they had to go for a Perez, and it's worked better for them. Yeah. But he also had a far better car than Albon or Gasly ever had. So weirdly, despite the fact I think we disagree on Albon, we seem to be kind of in the same area with him in that he's a good midfield
you know
driver.
What? I think, honestly, and I said this at the time, and I've said this, I think Pierre dropping Alex for Sergio was the right decision for 21. Because I don't think Max is winning that championship without Sergio Perez there to do still a better job, not as groundbreaking a better job, I think, than a lot of people seem to think, but he still did a better job. Yes, he was still demolished by Max in terms of particularly qualifying pace, but most of the time race pace Max was pulling away, apart from that Azerbaijan, which is a great track for Sergio anyway. And I just think that, I think that it was the right call to make, as much as it hurt. I think Red Bull acknowledged that, okay, maybe we need to try something different because, since Ricciardo left, they're not going to be able to sustain. It's a team sport. It's not an individual sport. And if they want to win both the constructors and the individual drivers championship, Sergio was pivotal in Max winning that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And as pundits will say it, we say it as YouTubers, we always talk about this cursed second Red Bull seat. But, I'm trying to think, looking through the grid, who would beat Max in that second car? Who would be on par with him? Lewis? I think.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
But even then, Lewis would be jumping into a Red Bull that he's never driven a car like that, isn't built for him. Exactly. Like I still think that Max, even though I'm not saying that I think Max is better than Lewis, I'm saying that in that Red Bull, do I think Max would be better than Lewis? Yes, 100%. I think he would, because that car, he knows that, because that is and it you know, this was true of Michael Schumacher when he won all his titles, when Senna was winning titles, when Vettel won his 4 world championships in a row. It's the perfect combination of great driver and a car that they're really comfortable in, that is up there and has to be, you know, first or second quickest car. If they're super comfortable, the driver can make the difference. You have to have those two factors, and that's what Max has at Red Bull.
Yeah. And I think it's lesser extent of Mercedes. I think Mercedes do. I think it'd be naive to say they don't favour Lewis, because I think there will be that favouritism there, because he's won so many titles with them. He is one of the best of all time, if not the best, some will argue. But I think they definitely build their car to suit both their drivers a bit more than Red Bull do. And that's not, you know, I was a Michael Schumacher fan. I am totally fine with a team getting behind one driver to win titles, because at the end of the day,
Rubens,
bless him, and Eddie and Felipe, Johnny, I think Johnny Herbert as well. Yeah, Jos Verstappen.
Man,
there
like
you
Johnny.
go. But yeah, it's a tough one, because the constructors pays the money, but who do we remember as fans? Who do brands want to see? They want the world champion, not necessarily the world championship winning team. So I totally get why Red Bull are pushing that, and why Ferrari did it, and why we'll probably see it again in the future, somewhere like Ferrari, maybe Mercedes or Red Bull. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a team sport, but the Drivers' Championship is the one that people want. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, because like you say, I think, yes, the prize money's in constructors, but no one, 2007, 2008, Lewis Hamilton won the world championship. No one remembers that Ferrari won the constructors.
No.
Who cares? But winning, having Max Verstappen, who won the world championship in 2021, and Mercedes win the constructors. Well, it's Max Verstappen him winning that was probably pivotal in getting that Oracle deal across the line, which is just for an absolute extortionate amount of money. I mean, Jesus Christ.
He probably paid his new salary as well for his new contract.
Probably. You know what? It's mad, isn't it? It's mad how, I feel like this, in your years watching the sport, from a commercial point of view as well, I think obviously tobacco sponsorship's gone. Now, I would ask you about all the crypto sponsors that are jumping in now, because I'm not here for it. I'll be honest. I don't know how much you know about crypto, but I'm not here for the industry, man.
I don't know a lot. I don't
big
really
money.
Understand
big
it.
money.
What? Oh yeah, but what I do know is the stuff I've read on, its effect on the environment, on the planet, and things like that. And I sort of think, well, does crypto really align with F1's green credentials, if they have any, or are these green credentials just there as a marketing ploy to encourage people to, look, we are doing something? No, you're not. You're literally going from Canada to Azerbaijan in a week. That's not doing anything for the planet. So I don't really know a lot. And like NFTs and stuff like that, I don't get it. I just know that people don't like them. But it's something I need to read up on. But ultimately, there's never really been anything that replaced tobacco sponsorship. So things like crypto, if they're going to pay the money that, your Marlboros were paying back in the 80s and 90s, then teams, green credentials or not, teams are not going to say no to that kind of money. So especially in the era of the cost cap and wanting to get drivers on big salaries, because that's separate to the cost cap, so they can go mad for like Max Verstappen's new deal, or if Lewis Hamilton wants a new one, they're going to want to pull that money in. And then equally, your crypto are going to want, well, if we're coming in, we want Max Verstappen on a long-term deal because he's the man that we want to put our brand around. And I don't really know a lot. Like I said, I don't know a lot about it, but I know it's not totally comfortable, but from a business point of view, I think we'd all be lying if we said we wouldn't take that money if we could.
I don't think it's 100% bad. You know what I mean? I don't think the crypto industry is 100% bad, just like most things in life. There's nuance there. But also I do think, there's a lot of rug pulling going on. You had that Iconic that went under, who they sponsored a bunch of teams, and I don't know. I personally feel like it's a bit of a, it's something that's waiting to drop off. But I guess we'll see. And talking of kind of changing the sport, because obviously you started your channel 2017, the year that Liberty Media took over. You know, because I'm trying to remember, and even the first season of Drive to Survive, I don't think I watched that like straight away. I think that was after a few months. I was like, oh, I don't even know if I had Netflix at the time. But how have you kind of perceived the change in the sport over that time period? Particularly as you've got content where you've almost got these kind of, you know, encapsulated in time videos that, you know, show your perspective in 2017 and 2018 and 19 and now up to 2022, you know?
I think it's quite tricky for me because, like I say, before I started YouTube, I didn't really bother with F1 social media. So to me, it's all big and new as it is, or not so much now, but it was when I started. But I think from what I look back on, I've been watching YouTube for years, long before I did the F1 word, but I don't remember seeing a lot on F1 apart from the gaming side. I don't think F1 themselves bothered. There was never anything on Twitter. If you did go to the F1 feed, they weren't really embracing social media. So I think that probably the 5 years that I've been doing it, I think I've seen the sport change online astronomically, like no sport has done possibly ever, but certainly not for a very long time, and the growth is insane. And that's something that I think Liberty Media deserve a hell of a lot more credit for than they're getting, because they kind of came in and embraced the 21st century. Bernie was not interested in the 21st century, and Liberty came in, and that was what they did straight away, was start to build F1 as a brand right up until what? So logo change in 2018, the logo changed.
Yeah, I think so.
Something, because they had the old logo for 17, didn't they? And then Bernie, they had to get rid of that because of Bernie, because that was his logo. Rebranded all of that, and then just took off on socials, and it's brilliant because it's engaged a whole new fan base. And although F1's been massive for me, and I know F1 has been watched for decades by millions of people all over the world, it now feels like the sport is reaching more people, reaching new people, and it's bigger now than it was a decade ago. Which, you know, a decade ago you think F1's huge, whereas now it's even bigger, and that's insane. And things like Drive to Survive, people get so stroppy about it, but it's so good for the sport. And it's like, oh, these bloody DTS fans. So what? They're buying the merch. They're watching the races. They're engaging on socials. That's all good for F1.
Well, it's the classic anti-casual sentiment, isn't it? You get it in football as well. Like, oh, these plastic fans who turn up, like,
never been to Old Trafford.
So it's fine. It's not just for you. Sport can be for everyone. And I think the potential, I think what's now being proven by a Drive to Survive, getting F1 out there, is that the potential for F1's fan base is astronomically higher than what it was in the Bernie era. You know, and I think Bernie, you know, credit to Bernie for getting the sport to where it was in terms of the top tier, most high profile motorsport of any motorsport. But his time was very much up, the digital era coming in. And I think they have they've shown that, that this sport can be a lot bigger than what it is.
No, I don't think anybody had the vision that Bernie had when he had it, when he started to take it to TV, and then doing the deal with ITV to get qualifying on and races in full. And that was when, for all his faults, it's very difficult to criticise him for that, because I don't think F1 would be where it is now without that. Because, you know, if you wait until Bernie's gone to start that, then does F1 even exist now to the extent that it is? Are people watching like they are now? He's the one that got it in front of people on TV in the UK and all over the world. And Liberty have kind of then taken it, like you say, for the digital era, and they're allowing people to engage in new ways. I wish they'd allow people to engage in even more new ways, and I think they could be a lot more open with it. But
for sure,
Liberty Media have really run with it, and I think that's brilliant. But they need to be careful they're not closing it off too much. So Formula E, I know you're a massive fan. Formula E.
You know what? I watched the first race of the season. Because it was a proper track, I I thought it was good, and I like the new qualifying format. I think it's a lot better. I still can't listen. I still hate the noise. It's just I just can't deal with it. I need to get older. So when certain pitches cancel out, when the older you get, you can't hear certain high frequencies.
Yeah.
I need to get to that stage before I can properly listen to it.
I think that's fair. I mean, all I was going to say is like when they started out, they were like reaching out. They reached out to me and to others and were like, here's some footage. You can show highlights, driver interviews. The second they became a world championship, they shut everybody out.
Really?
And I think that was... I know that they've got to protect broadcast partners and things like that because, from an F1 point of view, Sky pay an absolute fortune. So they can't have people like me showing the footage for free because that's not fair. But I think that F1 could be more open like Formula E were.
Yeah.
Probably not quite to that extent, but for some reason things just got shut out with FE, and I think that there seems to be... Maybe I'm just being naive, but there's something there when it becomes a world championship that stops people being allowed to use their stuff. If you see where I'm coming from, it just feels like something in the name World Championship that just stops everything. Well,
didn't that... Because it was already under the FIA umbrella, wasn't it? But it wasn't officially a World Championship, right?
No, last year was the first World Championship.
Yeah, because Nick de Vries was the first official world champion of Formula E, which was a bit of a... Who won it the year prior? I can't even remember.
Jean-Eric Vergne, I think.
Jean-Eric Vergne. But I just think that, and maybe we're just guilty of, we're creators, so we should get more stuff. But I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I think that given the relative success of our platforms and loads of other independent creators, I think the more that the sport really leans into and acknowledges, the value of having, people who, and of course there's going to be some toxic people that they won't want to endorse, and fine, but I like to think we kind of, we put our opinions out there, but we're not unreasonable. I think it could be a more collaborative. I remember seeing a while ago, I don't even follow Major League Baseball, but someone retweeted from the official Major League Baseball account sharing a congratulations for some independent baseball creator hitting 100K on YouTube. I was like, imagine F1 being like, F1 word 100K, congratulations. That would never happen.
No, that's more of the thing I think that I mean. I'm not expecting them to come around and say, here's 5-minute highlight packages, you can show them on your channel. But I think you could embrace content creators more and I want a better term, but use us. Just use and abuse us. Just be like, oh, Tomo, great platform. Let's throw Pierre Gasly his way this weekend. AlphaTauri could do that or whatever. And just engage with us and use our platforms to help promote the sport further. Because I'm pretty sure most people that watch content creators on YouTube are watching F1 as well and watching F1 YouTube. But it'd be great to have different people interviewing drivers, different people involved in the sport, other than, with all due respect to them, people like Martin Brundle, as good as they are. They've been around for a long time, and it'd be nice to have a different point of view. Somebody that isn't...
Yeah, of course.
How can I... That's terrible. I'm not attacking Will Buxton, but he gets it all the time. But people who are paid by F1 to interview these drivers aren't necessarily going to give a genuine opinion or a genuine reaction. I'm not going to say, sit down with Alex Albon and call him a prick or anything like that. I'm not talking like that, but an honest, asking honest questions, giving an honest reaction to him. That's what I'd love to see.
It's in the same way that, you had those press conferences where they had little kids asking the questions.
Yeah.
And you get a different side to the drivers. Now, I'm not saying we'd get, I'm not, but I could be sat there with my little dog and be like, do you like dogs, Pierre? Or something. I don't know. But you could have a different level of chat. And I do think Sky are starting to embrace that a bit more. I mean, it was Sky who reached out when I had Johnny Herbert on this podcast. That came from them. They reached out to me and they were like, "Would you like someone on the podcast?" I was like, "Yes, please, Johnny Herbert." So I do think, but not is it F1 in their official capacity? I've not seen that, but also, it's difficult, isn't it? Because I think it's a sport with so many different areas and so many different opinions and so many different perspectives. Some people love to hear about certain drivers. Some people love to hear about the tech stuff. Some people love to hear about the drama and the breaking news. And it's like, positioning yourself as a creator relative to all that as well. Because I feel like even though our channels are different, I think the premise of why we do and how we talk about things is quite similar, where we just, I just want to be sat here having a chat, like I'm having a chat with my mates, especially when I'm doing a live stream. Because growing up, I never really had friends that, I've had friends since who've got really into Formula One, but I never really had people to talk, like none of my family were into F1. I didn't really have that outlet.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's having fellow F1 fans, like-minded people to just talk to about it. Because we had, like, I think BBC did like a fan forum, which was interesting. But I mean, when I was watching it on ITV, I mean, they never did anything really. It was all just, here's your live shows, see you later. I think the BBC did a bit more with it. I think it's fair to say as well, Sky have done a lot more, and they're definitely getting better with it. But I don't know. I just feel like we should be one big community.
Yeah.
And that goes not just for F1, but that
100%.
goes for F1 content creators as well. I think we should all be getting on with each other, and we should all be making the effort. And I think as one big community, that's only going to benefit F1. It's only going to benefit us. It'll only benefit fans as well.
There's room at the table for everyone to eat.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Because I think kind of collaborations and work, like this is why I like having, as broad a spectrum of people on the podcast as possible, because I like discussing these things, whether it's creators, whether it's people who've worked in the sport and whatever. And I do think, there's that, we're all going in the same direction. Exactly what you say. I think we all benefit from working together. And I think it gives more content for people to consume. And I'm all about more people starting up as well. I still think there aren't as many. I've talked about it. I want to see fan channels next year. I want to see Ferrari Fan TV every week, just roasting the Tifosi. That's what I want to see. I think there's so much room for more content, more people to be talking about it out there, personally.
Yeah, in some ways, that's kind of what I wanted to model the channel on, was like the United Stand style of thing, but for F1. But I rapidly learned that you can't do that, because you need to be centered around a team for that to work, because there's just too much to cover and too many opinions in there. So it would need to be, like you say, like Ferrari Fan TV, which would be possibly some of the best content on the internet, because they are, would you say they're kind of like, Arsenal fans, the Arsenal of F1? Are they kind of a bit
literally,
like
exactly. I said this, was it? It was Sam with Perspective in the podcast with him. I was like, don't Ferrari remind you of Arsenal? Very, very passionate fan base, have had highs in the past, struggle, but now starting to kind of come back up again.
Yeah, still living off that history and not the here and now kind of thing. Yeah.
Says a United
I also
fan.
realise as a Man United fan, that is like the most hypocritical thing I could say. Do you remember 1999? It's 2022, get over it.
Sorry, Sean, I had to get that in there, mate. But no,
I'll let you off.
I agree. I think there's a lot more. And hopefully at some point, I'd love to come on your channel, mate, because I haven't been on your channel yet. And I'd love to jump in on a live stream. And
as long as you're okay with you do your own live streams, so you know how to be live. So
exactly,
you're always welcome, mate. It's not a crap. We just talk nonsense, especially in testing streams. But
what I do best. This is what I do best. Even like I was shooting some bits with Veloce yesterday, and it was like they gave me like a script, and I was like, oh fucking hell! I'm like, I don't do scripts. Like if you give me a script, and then I'm allowed to just read that and be like, okay, what am I trying to communicate? Okay, I'm going to communicate that, and just say it in my own way. But if I have to actually remember word for word, I am finished. I am done. I can't do it.
I have a Word document open when I do my proper recorded videos, and I can sit and do a live stream, talk for 2 hours, no problem at all.
Yeah.
The minute I try to read a line, apparently I've forgotten English. I just I cannot. And I've just got so many outtakes of me just punching my desk and getting angry because I can't read the word what or something like that. And it's just, I much prefer the live stuff, and it's just more genuine, I think, as well. But I totally get that you need your scripting to a point, because you've got to keep your videos short, so you can't just have 2 hour videos all the time. But I just wish we didn't have to.
Yeah, that's the dream. But also kind of, given the success of your channel, has that ever, have you ever considered being like, because you've built up these skills, live streaming is a skill to be able to communicate and talk. And, yes, it is. Even when you are just like shooting the shit and not taking it too seriously, like to engage and to speak for that long, like it is a skill. Have you ever considered kind of being, going down a more, because I could definitely see you doing comms. Like, I think you've got that voice for it. I think I could see that skill being something that you could continue to develop. Have you ever considered kind of moving away from the channel and going into some kind of like media role at all? Or have you had any opportunities to do that?
If the channel died tomorrow, it's not an arrogance thing. It's not me being silly, but I do not want to go back to the jobs I've had before. I want to work in motorsport. I want to work in F1. So I am, as that traffic goes past making a racket. Anyway, I'm exploring options at the moment that will allow me to kind of get a foot in the door in some places, so that I have options in the future. Because I know YouTube's fickle. It might last forever. It might not. But I just want to make sure that I've got a way in somewhere, because just talking about F1 would be amazing. I don't know about comms. I don't know if I'd be able to do like proper commentary, because I used to do my watch-alongs and I was so bad at them, because they gave me newfound respect for the likes of Crofty. It's no wonder he makes so many mistakes, really. So I don't know about that, but certainly I'd love to be able to do a bit more on what I do now elsewhere. If the channel were to just collapse tomorrow, quite pessimistic, aren't I? That I seem to think everything's going to end tomorrow. But
well, look,
you never know, do you? That's the thing.
The thing is, I think I don't know. I've kind of got a theory in terms of when you start to put your face out there as well, that again, there's pros and cons, but I feel like if you're kind of a faceless YouTube channel, and you don't have the level of like nuance and emotion and character to your voice like you do. So say you're just an F1 news channel, kind of more like Formula World, I'd say, with what Dylan does. He's kind of very quick uploads, straight on it, on the facts. Because he's not putting himself in that, if that channel was to go down, I think it'd be more difficult than, say, for example, if my channel went down. Obviously, I could just set up a new channel and be like, I'm over here, come over here. Because that's why I've tried to build my Twitter following as well, to have that. Twitter works as toxic as it is, and I do want to talk about that. It kind of functions as an extension of YouTube, because you can carry on that conversation. Because it is that's what I don't use Instagram, because I've got no real interest in. I'll just post pictures when I'm on holiday. That's about it. But Twitter feels like more connected to the kind of content that I do personally. But I think having those. Because I know I could just go back to graphic design if shit really did hit the fan, and for whatever reason I'd kind of have to completely knock YouTube on the head, and any F1 stuff I guess I could go back to that as well. So it's good to have those things in place, because you don't know what's going to happen in the future, man.
You never know. That's like I say, just be prepared for anything. I don't want to be pessimistic, because I think if you start thinking all the time about this channel's going to die, I think you're never going to enjoy it, because everything's going to be a panic, and you go, I must do this now, otherwise I'm in trouble. But you shouldn't think like that, but I think you have to be aware that it's a fickle thing. Yeah. And you've just got to keep going, push on, but always have that in the back of your mind, that what happens if this all goes wrong, which is why I want to get out there and try and get a foot in the door somewhere. But I'm so pleased to hear you say you don't bother with Instagram, because this is 35-year-old Sean talking. I do not get Instagram. I do not get it at all. I know it's photos. I know it's like Twitter, but pictures, but not quite as intuitive as Twitter, not quite as instant in like conversations as Twitter is, but I cannot get on with Instagram. I need to use it because it's a platform, but I don't get it. I know what it is. I'm not an idiot.
Well, I feel like for both of us, like if we used Instagram more, it would be good for our brands, and we'd get a few more people over and all that. But it's like, I'm not going to, like, I like using Twitter because I like using Twitter. Like, I don't post on there out of obligation. I post on there because if we were making the smartest business decisions, we'd have our content clipped up on TikTok, and we'd have Instagram Reels and all that stuff. And I'm just like, I can't really be asked. Like, I like doing everything myself. And I'm sure, you will have been able to bring more people on if you'd wanted to the F1 Word family. But I like the control, personally.
I'm totally the same. it's so, I don't know if it's arrogant or what, but it's kind of like, I want to do it, and it's my channel, it's my baby, and I'm gonna do what I want, and I'll do it when I want to do it. And you know, I could probably have brought somebody in part-time to help out, but I don't see the point when I can do what I'm doing and it does well. Of course, there's things I want to improve on, like my graphic design is horrendous, and my I know that my videos are essentially images and B-roll, and by the time we get to summer break, people are sick of seeing that same shot of Max Verstappen walking into the garage. I get that, but that's what I like doing, and I like improving. And I do things all the time to try and better what I do, which I think is important. So if you just put a YouTube video on and learn how to do something in After Effects, just for an hour every now and again, it all helps. But I don't want to bring somebody into that, because I want to learn that myself. They're skills that I can learn now and could use in the future. Yeah, I think that's definitely important to me.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, you talk about transferable skills. I think people talk about being a YouTuber as this cushy job, and it's like blah blah blah. It's like there's so many transferable skills you can gain from creating content on YouTube: script writing, speaking to camera, editing, graphic design, like understanding marketing and SEO, because that's what you're doing. You're putting that into every video. Like, there's so many transferable skills that you take from the job. I think, like, 100%.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to go back to another Aldi or a Lidl, whatever the equivalent would be, because they won't have me back after the way I left. That was in a blaze of glory. That was.
Oh, go on, come on. You can't say that and not elaborate. I want to know.
It was essentially, the channel made like £3, and I was like, well, that's it. This is my job. So that's kind of like
confidence. I like that.
I kind of figured, I like looking at stuff on YouTube, and I was thinking, well, what makes these channels successful? And one of the key things was they upload, not all the time, but I mean, some people do, like 2 videos a day, some people, but they upload every other day. They make that effort. So I wanted to do that, but I couldn't do that with a full-time job. And I was confident. I'm confident now. I wasn't at the time. I was shitting myself. But I'm confident saying it now that the channel would grow, and that it could become even a part-time job, but I needed the time to do that. So I just deep breath and went into work and told them to stick it. I do not advise doing that to anybody. Nobody do that. Do it properly, because you never know when you might need them. Don't burn your bridges.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I don't even go back in there now.
You dare show your face.
I go to the other one up the road.
So I'm guessing you had the best experience there then, hence why you didn't leave in the most...
When I'd started, I was working at a news store in my old hometown.
Yeah.
Or I suppose it's still my hometown, technically. It's where I grew up. But I started there, and because we all started at the same time, we were a really good team, and we all got on really, really well, and it was awesome. And I actually really enjoyed working there for what it was.
Yeah.
But then I moved to Lincoln, and I transferred to a store here, and they've all been there years, and they've all got their cliques and all that, and they're all busy mates, and I was the new boy. And in the end, I was just like, do you know what? Stick it up your backside. I'm too old for this, was kind of my attitude at 30 years old. I'm too old for this. Can't take it. Well, so I was just like, nah, I'm going to go for it. And if it fails, then I'll go get a job somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I wanted to try.
But you gave it a go. I think too many people, out of fear a lot of the time, I think just giving something a go. There was no guarantee it was going to be successful. You've been successful. If it hadn't have been, then you would have found a way. You know what I mean? I think, you're never going to win the lottery unless you buy a ticket. If you don't buy a ticket, then there's no chance. And even if something might seem unlikely, the fact that you went for it, I think that's an important lesson. Because were there times after you went, right, YouTube full-time 100%, were there times that you seriously considered, like, I've made a mistake, I'm giving up on this, I'm going to knock this on the head?
About half an hour after I'd walked out, I was like, oh, crap. How am I going to pay the bills?
This isn't a dream. I've done it now.
Yeah, what have I done? I'm quite fortunate in that my partner has a good job and is paid well, so that made it easier. Not really, if I'm honest, because obviously it was nervy, because you think, oh, if it doesn't make money, then what are we going to do? But once I'd gone full time. It had gone from, I think it had just shot up to 10k by end of January. By the start of March, It was at 20k, and it just kept going and going. You know, it slowed down a bit as things do, and it got to I think it was October, and it was 50k, and it just kept growing. So it never was. It was always in the back of my mind, if I'm honest. What if? But it was never a concern because it just kept growing and growing. So I kind of just enjoyed riding that wave a little bit. It's reality bites sometimes, of course it does. Off season every year, it's like I get cold sweats. Running up to the final 2 races of the year, I'm like, what am I going to do? This year's been horrible. 20th of November, it's all over. What am I going to do? What am I going to do till February? But yeah, no.
It's a bigger gap this time, it's true.
It's huge. In comparison to what I've had the last couple of years. It doesn't feel like 5 minutes since Abu Dhabi for probably obvious reasons, because people just haven't let that go yet. So it's been going on all winter, that race, really. But it's going to be weird this winter.
Well, and was there, when you talk about the growth, was there like a particular video that you were like, yes, this is the one that first kind of clicked and led to that? You know, I always look back to my Rich Energy Red Bull video. That was the one that first kind of caught some kind of algorithm, and then I was able to follow it up and, like you say, ride the wave. Did you have a video like that?
Yeah, the feedback I get even now, people say, the first video I watched of yours was the Halo rant, but that wasn't the one that really set the channel off, because that was a terrible video, which is no longer on the channel. It was awful. It made no sense. And not a lot of what I say makes sense, if we're being honest. But the Halo video was just me screaming about how ugly it was. And it's like, yeah, but looking back now, how stupid is that? But the one that really set the channel off was a video I did after the US Grand Prix in 2017, where Max had been booted out the cooldown room because he'd cut that corner, overtaking Raikkonen. And I did a video on, I think it was called Track Limits Analysing FIA Inconsistencies, something like that. And it was essentially me going through all the examples from that race and the race the year before, saying that Max absolutely deserves a penalty for that because he's cut the corner. That's breaking the rules. But if that's a penalty, so are all of these. And looking at the inconsistency between them. And that was my first video to do 10K and up. It hit 100K in it was only about a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Wow.
And at that point, the channel was only 1,500 subs. Yeah. So it was kind of like, this is mental. And I think that's what gave me the confidence later in the year to quit that job, because I knew that if I got it right, I could do it. And then the second one that I did, which really kicked the channel on, was January 2018, which was my Why Is Lewis Hamilton So Hated video, which has done, I think, 1.5 million views now, and still, I mean, after Abu Dhabi, it was one of the most watched videos of the month, which is ridiculous, really.
Wow.
So it was kind of those two that really let the channel take off. So I can't think of any that were anything like those two in terms of growth.
Yeah. I think sometimes, I feel like with most channels that I've seen, not just within F1, just because I watch a lot of YouTube as well, like most channels that I see, there's that first video that really just catches, and there's so much like that. That is the thing, isn't it? I've got no real reason. I've got my theories as to why my first video blew up, but you know, the reason YouTube doesn't tell you really, and it wouldn't have told you in 2017, it doesn't really tell you now why that first video blew up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like even now, I mean, the studio is so much better, but it's not very intuitive, and it doesn't tell, you know, it'll say things, stupid things like, this video's getting more views because more people are watching it. Well, yeah,
yeah, literally.
You know? I don't
no
know. No
shit,
obvious.
Sherlock.
Come on, YouTube, that's ridiculous. But I think studio, I mean, it's good. I think there's a lot of more stuff in there now.
Yeah.
But also, there's a lot of bad stuff in there, because if you go on your channel and you put a new video out and it does 10 out of 10, even if your other 9 videos are brilliant, you're just like, oh my God, it's over.
And it's just there. It's there straight away. It's the first thing. You don't scroll down to it, to anyone who doesn't, like, you don't scroll down to it. It's just there straight away. That is your validation straight there. And you're either happy or sad.
You suck. Every time you log on, hey Sean, you're crap. All right.
No. I think there's a lot that the platform can still do. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot. Look, obviously, without YouTube, me and you aren't doing what we're doing. We're not working in F1, and I think that's obviously an incredible privilege. But also, doesn't mean things can't get better. But obviously, talking of social, because again, when I started making YouTube videos, for me it was my hobby. It was more of just a creative endeavor. I wanted to learn how to make videos. I wanted to get better at speaking on camera. You know, you had your reasons for starting, but I think something I wasn't remotely interested, because I made football videos for 4 years and got just over 400 subscribers. That's averaging 100 subscribers a year. Wasn't great, but I did it because I loved it. But then all of this, when things do get big, and then you've got a lot of people following you, a lot of people kind of looking at and interpreting what you're saying in their own way sometimes. And especially with the whole kind of Verstappen, Hamilton, the way the season finished last night, and it was so toxic last year online. What's your perspective on, not just, I'm not going to ask you, who was at fault for blah, 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 because that's water under a bridge. But in terms of, F1 Twitter and the comments on YouTube as well, like, is it that we're being focused, because we focus as human beings, we focus more on the negatives than the positives, right? Like, if you get 10 positive comments and one negative one, you focus on the negative. Is it a case of that? Is it as toxic as we feel it is, or are we just kind of blowing it up a bit too much?
Honestly, I think it's a bit of both, because I'll put a video out, I'll get to 100 likes, and I'll be like, brilliant, and then I get one dislike, and I'll sit and cry eating ice cream for an hour. Like, what have I done wrong? Why do you hate me? It's like, one person, get over it, And I think there is an element of that even on socials. Like, you'll put a tweet out and you'll get 10 responses, 9 will sort of give their view or agree with you or whatever, or post a meme, but then you'll get one that'll just go, you're a prick, and then all you think about all day is that person that's just called you a prick. Like, why? Just mute them and move on. There's no need to even engage with them. They're not interested in that conversation. They're not interested in being, respectful. Then I'm not going to waste my time with you. That's how we should be, but we don't, do we? We just get really annoyed by it. But it's definitely toxic on Twitter in particular. I think the comment sections aren't as bad actually as things are on Twitter. I think
I agree.
With Twitter, you can kind of go for a person, can't you? You can be like, right, I'm going to go tell Sean he's an arse, and he'll see it. But on YouTube, you'll see it, but it's not the same as having a conversation on Twitter. I can't really explain it anyway, but it's definitely more toxic on F1 Twitter.
I think like YouTube, it's more like an isolated comment, but on Twitter, you can retweet, you can kind of like, that can spread across Twitter like a lot quicker. Like on YouTube, you don't really, it's just an isolated comment. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and I like the idea of Twitter, and I think there's a lot of good stuff over there, and you can have some great conversations. It's a great way for creators to talk. It's a great way for people that are subscribed to the channel to talk to you. But for me personally, I find it difficult sometimes to have a conversation with somebody, because you're just waiting for some knobhead, frankly, to jump in and start hurling abuse at you or the person you're talking to. And it makes that difficult for me sometimes to have that conversation, which is ridiculous, because we shouldn't be restricted in what we're saying and doing by a handful of people who might get annoyed.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. I think that's what Twitter doesn't do well. But at the same time, it's also, when they're put respectfully, it's also nice to see those different opinions, to see people saying, you're wrong on this, Sean, because I've got a thing on YouTube, which it's a rule I have, which I've made clear to people before. If I don't want people to agree with me, I want people to tell me why I'm wrong. I want people to have a different opinion. That is why I do it, to have that conversation. So if somebody comes to me and says, Christ, Sean, you are way off with this one, mate, and here's why, I will engage with them. If somebody starts that very same message with, you're a dick, I'm not talking to them. I'm not interested in what they've got to say, because you don't have to agree with me, but just be respectful. And I kind of wish we could do that on Twitter, but the last 2 months since Abu Dhabi, it's been hell in some ways on there. And I totally get why Hamilton fans are pissed. I think most people do. I totally get why Verstappen fans are annoyed that they can't enjoy the fact that he is the world champion. But there comes a point where you can scream into the void all you like. Nobody's going to listen. You have to I suppose I don't like saying move on because it sounds really flippant, doesn't it? Like, oh, just move on, get over it. But I think there comes a point where you have to move on and just hope that the changes that have been put in place are going to benefit the sport. But it's also not the first massively controversial moment in F1 history.
And won't be the last.
No. I hope not.
Yeah,
want a bit of controversy every now and again.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of it boils down to, you know, when you're putting a tweet out or replying to someone or whatever, it's like, what are you trying to achieve by doing what you're doing? Are you trying to have a nuanced discussion? Are you just trying to wind someone up? Are you just trying to be a top meme lord? I think there's a lot of reasons why people put themselves out there. But yeah, I think, I just think that, you know what I find is that, and I'm sure you'll have definitely had this because I get it loads, or maybe it's just me. It's very cynical a lot of the time. So, you know, you'll say something and then it will be interpreted in the worst way you could interpret someone saying that. So, you know, for example, say, like, I think, you know, Lewis was more at fault for the Silverstone incident, for example. And then the most cynical way of interpreting that is like, you're anti-Lewis, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, because I think Max was at fault for the Brazil one where he pushed Lewis off into a different county. So it's just like, I think there's that, and that cynicism makes things personal sometimes, because then you're not just looking at the statement and giving benefit of the doubt and giving room for interpretation, because it's impossible to be 100% clear exactly what your words are just a vessel for, you know, communicating your feeling. And I think that's what Twitter struggles with a lot of the time.
Yeah, people will interpret your words however they want to. It doesn't matter what you say or how you say it or how many times you say, I'm not anti-Lewis, I'm not a Max fanboy. There's always going to be somebody that's like, you are. Because it's just, again, going back to what I said earlier about being a Michael Schumacher fanboy, he could do no wrong. And if anyone said a bad word about him, they were pure evil and I hated them. So I totally get it. I'm not going to pretend I'm innocent in that. But I think it's not really true, because what I'm going to say, but it's a saying that I see a lot, is that if you're upsetting both sides of an argument, you're probably doing the right thing. And I don't agree with that as such, because you shouldn't be upsetting anybody. But if both sides are telling you you're a fanboy of their driver, then clearly you're unbiased, because you'll be accused on both sides of hate for Max and hate for Lewis. So does that make sense? I don't
100%.
think that's a good way to say, well, clearly I'm not biased towards either. If this is my opinion, this is maybe a bit sat on the fence. I mean, I think Monza, I think that was a racing incident. People give me a lot of stick for that. I think that was a racing incident.
I'd agree with that.
I said after Silverstone, if you're giving a penalty to anybody, it had to be to Hamilton. And I said quite clearly that Brazil 100% Verstappen should have had a penalty for that.
Of course. I don't even know how people would debate that one. I'm not going to lie.
It's so weird. Like, he's just shoved him off the track, guys.
And himself as well. But I know exactly what you're saying. I was thinking about this a little while ago, actually. I honestly think, right, given the whole Hamilton-Verstappen thing recently, right, I think over the course of 21, if I had aligned with one driver for everything, so aligned with Verstappen, because I think some people will say, oh, you're just pandering because you want to please everyone. I actually think the opposite's true. I think if I just aligned with one driver, Hamilton or Verstappen, I think overall I would have got less stick. But because you look at each incident, and then people will be like, oh yeah, but you said Lewis was at fault that time, but now you say Max is at fault, you're just pandering. It's like, actually, I think you get less stick by just siding with one side, and because then you've got that side to defend you and back you up. You know what I mean?
That goes back to your fan TV, your Verstappen fan TV thing, doesn't it? You're always going to get Verstappen fans that are going to be like, oh, I'm going to follow you because you like Max Verstappen. But you get a whataboutery all the time, don't you? Oh, well, at this race, you said it was Hamilton's fault, but you're saying here it's Verstappen's. No two incidents are the same, no two tracks are the same, no two outcomes are the same. You can't look at them and say, well, I said that about that, so I have to say it about this, because they're not the same incident, not the same anything.
The context, the nuance is completely different.
Exactly that.
Part of the enjoyment I get from doing this, and I'm sure you're the same, is that I don't want an echo chamber. I want to have, like, when you have these sporting discussions with your mates, you're not all agreeing with you. Like, the more interesting ones are when you don't agree and you're debating over like VAR decisions or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I want to be having honest conversations and honest discussions, and I wouldn't get any enjoyment out of just blindly supporting Alex, for example, in everything that he did. Like in 2020 when him and Magnussen had their coming together at Silverstone, I was like, Alex, what are you doing? Like, that's a stupid move to make so early on in the race. Like, yes, he had a bit of a run, but that's not an overtaking opportunity. And then people are like, oh, why are you having a go at Alex? I was like, well, just because I support him doesn't mean I'm going to blindly, because that's not fun to me. That's not interesting. That's not genuine.
It's back to football. I'm a Man United fan, but I'll tell you when they're playing crap, which, I mean, granted is every week at the minute, but, you know, I'll enjoy the success, but I can tell you when they're being rubbish. It doesn't mean that I'm not supporting my team. I'm just saying they're awful, and I think let's be honest, you know, they're terrible. But I don't see the point in. I think echo chambers are a dangerous thing because it leads you into a false sense of security, and I think you have to keep yourself open to differing opinions, and people should keep themselves open to you changing your opinion. There seems to be that thing online as well that you can't change your opinion. So if I say,
oh God, yeah, I know.
You know, if I say today Alex Albon's a prick, and then I say in 6 months' time that I love him, people will go, well, you said this 6 months ago.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, you can change your view.
God. Yes. This is me with Fernando Alonso. I didn't used to like Fernando, but since he's come back into the sport,
neither did I.
Did a much better job than he had in the past. I've found myself, because because I really liked it when he was on the wind up at Russia. I'd be like, I'm going to cut this call. I love that. I thought it was great. But it was in the past, it seems more like focused toward like inwards at the team. Whereas now it's more like, I can deal with that. I like this Fernando.
I mean, I couldn't stand him. I was so pleased to see the back of him when he left, because all he did was witter about F1. It's like, well, just go. Just go. If you don't want to be here, just go. He was the one who stopped Schumacher's run of titles, so I was always going to hate him for that.
Extra baggage.
But then he came back, kind of like Schumacher did in 2010. I think he gained a lot of fans because he came back, realised that he did love F1, was a lot more relaxed, was a lot more chatty. I'm sure he still has his moans, but he wasn't as moany. And I think Fernando Alonso is somebody now that I actually really like and enjoy hearing from and love watching race.
Same.
Because,
Same.
I mean, Hungary last year against Lewis Hamilton, I mean, that was just incredible.
So good.
That guy can still drive. He's just as talented 100%. As he ever was, but he's just not a bit of a knobhead with it. And I've changed my opinion on him, but you're not allowed to do that. So
and that's it. I think you can acknowledge, you know, the Fernando of the past. You know, I haven't always liked the way he's come across, but the Fernando of the present, I rate him. And also I think as well, like, you know, you can have an opinion of someone, how someone conducts themselves off track, but also like Fernando Alonso, his ability, like he's always been for me one of the best drivers. Like he's easy in the top 10 for me of all time. Like in terms of talent, I've just, you know, it's the other stuff that, you know, which is quite normal. You can really like a football player, but then think they come across as a bit of a knobhead. You know what I mean?
Same thing, different. It's just a sport thing, isn't it? It's a person. Do you know what? Nobody would have liked 19-year-old Sean. I was horrible. I was so horrible. I was an awful human being at 19. So bad, but I'm not that person now. So
exactly,
I think I'm a nice guy, and I'm just me.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
People that met me now who knew me at 19 will probably think I'm a completely different person. My parents.
People change.
Do, so.
People change, and people's perspective changes of people. Well, Sean, I've got one last question, and we'll round it up because you've given me a lot of your time here, mate. I do appreciate it. And it's kind of harking back to something we were talking about earlier, which is about kind of, you know, the idea of keeping the channel to yourself and not wanting to, you know, what do you see the ceiling for the F1 Word YouTube channel as being? Like, do you see it as being big production, maybe getting a studio live stream show, or do you see the ceiling as being just the maximum you can kind of achieve and keeping it within yourself and just yourself talking and doing stuff? Like, where is that ceiling for you?
I'd love for it to be huge. I'd love to...
Because then you'll need help. Then you'll need to employ people.
But something I'd quite like to do in the next year or so is start making use, where possible, of the YouTube space down in London, which I think would be a way to start to practice with that kind of content. but ultimately I'd love to be able to have a proper studio when I do my live streams, where possible, get people over to me, sat on a sofa, just sat talking like mates in a pub, talking about F1 as it's happened, and rather than just being sat in an office behind a microphone. I'd love to do stuff like that, but equally, if that never really takes off or never happens, I'm weirdly quite content plodding along as I am. There's a lot I want to improve. I need to be more consistent. I want to do more content. I want to involve more of the F1 YouTube community, because I've really, the last 2 years, really isolated myself massively, and that's got to change, because people will tell me, again, not a cocky thing, but people tell me that once upon a time the F1 word was kind of the cornerstone of the F1 community, and then I just kind of got a group of 4 people and shut myself away for some weird reason. That's got to change. So there's a lot I want to sort of go back to with the channel before I start focusing too much on the long term, if that makes sense. Get back to its roots a little bit. But also, I'd love to do proper stood in the paddock, Ted's notebook style nonsense, walking down the paddock one day with a microphone, just going, Ferrari, they were terrible. We got in the championship and they were nowhere. That's evergreen content right there, that line.
That is. Absolutely.
I think it's such a cliche line, the sky's the limit. Just keep going, and I end up where I end up, and just hope that this doesn't all come crashing down around me. And on
I'm
that
sure it won't,
note,
mate. Well, it sounds fantastic. I hope to get invited on that sofa once the studio space opens, because that would be good fun.
You've got to get you on a live stream first.
Yeah, true. We can just do sequential live streams.
And then you can go, I would never sit on a sofa with him.
Watch this space. Right, Sean, mate, we'll wrap it up there, man. Thank you, honestly, so much for giving me your time. And it's been a pleasure having you on. And have you enjoyed your appearance on the Cool Down? No face reveal.
Yeah.
But your audio appearance.
Well, maybe that's what I look like, that camera with the line through. Maybe that is my face. You don't know. It could be.
You can't prove otherwise.
But yeah, no, it's been awesome. It's been nice to actually, we said before we started recording, I think, like, we've both been going and we've never said a word to each other, and it seems fucking atrocious.
Yeah.
It seems ridiculous. So it was just nice to sit and talk to you, and the fact you can do a podcast with it is even better. So thank you for having me on, and love to do it again sometime. It'd be
Definitely,
great.
man. No, I'd love to be on one of your streams for sure, man. We'll get that sorted, no question. But yeah, thank you everyone who's watched and listened, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pixo, MySpace, Yahoo.com, wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah, Bebo throwback. And I don't have an outro. That is the outro to the podcast. Goodbye, everyone. We are done.